development of the internet in the Netherlands and Europe since the early 1980s. Jaap Akkerhuis.
It's kind of exciting to be here and being the first, but that's what you get when your name starts with an A, I guess. And I'm pretty happy with this being inducted in Hall of Fame, and I also take it not only for my own personal activities, but also for more people like me who not really well known and are doing a lot of work in the limelight, and expanding the internet by just doing hard work and just having fun at the side. And so, with that in mind, I want to thank ISOC for this honor. Thanks.
Next, we recognize one of the first people to use the internet to develop and advance global e-learning opportunities for educators and students. Yvonne Marie Andres.
Hi, everyone. So thank you to the Internet Society for this wonderful honor. I accept this recognition on behalf of all of my global collaborators, some of who are in the room tonight. I started my career as a teacher, working with very low achieving students, many coming from troubled families with drug, gang, and prison connections. But I had a life-changing moment in 1984 that finally got my students excited about learning. Apple launched a program called Kids Can't Wait and gave every school in California a computer. Unfortunately, the computer did not come with software. That was when Al Rogers, another San Diego teacher, and I teamed up to create a free word processing program that we called Free Educational Writer, or Fred Writer. Next came Fred Mail, which stood for Free Educational Electronic Mail. Fred Mail ran on an Apple IIe and used a store and forward protocol. That meant that students would write during class time, save their work on a floppy disk, and in the middle of the night, when no one was using the phone line at the school and costs were the cheapest, Fred Mail would forward their writing to the next location. It sometimes took several weeks to get from one place to the next. Everyone who heard about Fred Mail wanted to be part of the network, and it rapidly grew throughout the US and to other countries. There was an Aussie Fred, a New Guinea Fred, and I remember a colleague from Argentina who managed to get a Spanish version of Fred into his country by hiding the installation disk under his shirt. Then in 1991, thousands of Fred Mail users gained access to the NSF net via new gateways at Merritt in Michigan and SurfNet in San Diego. Thank you, Susan. Through the Fred Mail NSF Gateway, educators worldwide were able to share classroom experiences and connect students with scientists, business leaders, and explorers. At its peak, Fred Mail was used by 12,000 schools and had 350 nodes around the globe. When the World Wide Web became available to the public in 1993, we launched our first website called the Global Schoolhouse. That was the year we teamed up with Cisco Systems, Network Solutions, and MCI to facilitate an international cyber fair, which is an online World's Fair where youth create virtual exhibits about their local community. More than 5 million students from 105 countries have contributed. Hi, Tracy, wherever you are. She was involved, and you'll meet her later. This year we're celebrating our 22nd year running Cyber Fair, and I would love to see projects from every one of your countries in this room. One of my proudest moments came in 1994 when I received a National Science Foundation grant to introduce internet-based desktop video conferencing called See You, See Me to K-12 education. Working with Cornell University, we used See You, See Me to engage students with many notables, including former Internet Hall of Fame inductees Vice President Al Gore and Vint Cerf. We even used See You, See Me to launch the first ever television broadcast live over the internet with World News Now. Thank you, Victor. Spoiler alert, I predicted that eventually we would be using the internet to share news and learn together. For me, the internet has always been about encouraging collaborations and people connections. For 10 years, I ran a program for high school students supported by the State Department called Doors to Diplomacy. And after 9/11, I was invited to the White House to meet with President George Bush to create Friendship Through Education, a program aimed at using the internet to increase cultural understanding. Fast forward to today. Global SchoolNet has grown to 150,000 registered members from 194 countries. I am always looking for new opportunities to use the internet in innovative ways that will improve the quality of life for all of Earth's inhabitants. I currently co-organize the Global Forest Link project, which connects youth and scientists around the world to collaboratively analyze forest health. And last year, Global SchoolNet joined forces with the Lavender Effect to organize the LGBT History Student Filmmaker Competition to encourage youth to produce digital stories that celebrate significant LGBTQ luminaries, landmarks, and contributions to society. While I'm honored and humbled by the Internet Hall of Fame recognition, my greatest hope is that there are individuals and businesses listening today or tomorrow or next week who will step up to offer support for the work that we do at Global SchoolNet. Thank you.
Now, we have this next person to thank for making things online easier to find. He conceived of and implemented the world's first internet search engine, pioneering many of the techniques that our search engines, great and small, use today. Mr. Alan Emtich.
Thank you, everybody. As you can see, I made it here from last night. We weren't diverted. I would like to thank the Internet Society. I am honored and humbled by this honor. I'm told by the Secretariat that I am the first Barbadian and the first person from the Caribbean to receive be an inductee into the Hall of Fame, so I'm proud of that. As I look across the assembled crowd here tonight, it's gratifying to see how diverse this is, particularly, and how that has changed over the last 30 years. I would like to, there are a couple of things I'd just like to say. We are in the internet nowadays people think of as being this incredibly competitive and commercial market. For those of us who worked on it 30 years ago, and for whom commercial activity was actually forbidden, this is quite a change. And while the spirit of altruism still continues to exist on the internet, much of the internet works on open source software, which is contributed freely by programmers and engineers across the world. That spirit of altruism started very early on, and it is, well, without blowing my own horn, the internet as we know it today wouldn't exist were it not for the fact that a lot of the organizations and individuals who worked on it back then freely allowed the fruit of their work to be distributed for free. So CERN on the World Wide Web released that software into the public domain. Brewster Kahle, that was Tim Berners-Lee, Brewster Kahle did a similar thing with Thinking Machines and Waze, Mark McCahill and Gopher. And ourselves, I'll read a little story here. I had a conversation with Vint Cerf probably 30 years ago, and he jokingly said to me, "Why don't you patent the techniques that you're using in Archie for the search engine?" And we thought about it. We thought about it long and hard, and we decided that to do so would sort of strangle the baby in the crib, that it would restrict the ability of people to use what we had learned and to expand on it. So the primary question I get is, why am I not a billionaire? And I'm quite happy not to be a billionaire. That's fine with me. But it was done in the spirit of cooperation and realizing that while we were working on something that was big and was going to change the world, I don't think anybody back then really knew how much it was going to change and how profound a change it was going to be. Two people I'd like to mention here and thank for me being here is, one is my business partner back then, my boss and business partner with Peter Deutsch, who did a lot of work to bring Archie into the wider world. And somebody else that a lot of the old timers here will remember and who was instrumental in what we call the user services layer of the internet. When I first got to the IETF back in 1991, it was a lot of engineers, and there wasn't a lot of attention paid to the users. And the person would be Joyce Reynolds. Joyce Reynolds, who is unfortunately no longer with us, worked hand in hand with John Postel and really nurtured the user services group in the IETF, and she has a huge hand in the internet that we know and love today. So I really would like to acknowledge her. So thank you. I'm most honored.
This next person helped to develop and deploy early internet infrastructure through US regional networks. In addition, he also wrote one of the earliest non-technical internet guides in 1987. He is Edward Kopp.
Too many pieces of paper. When I first learned about being named for this award, I listened to the acceptance speeches of prior awardees, and I noticed the central theme was, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And in fact, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But probably more than that, the important thing was we picked the right technology, IP. We were a group of experienced software people at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois, and we were charged with learning networking and connecting that supercomputer to the rest of the world. We picked IP because it was open, it worked, and had a participatory development path. We didn't know at the time that Dennis Jennings was looking for a group who was too naive to know it was hard to build a nationwide 56 kilobit network to connect the supercomputer centers together and then go on to tie them to the emerging research networks. He picked us to head the effort, and thanks to a lot of help from the centers, the regional networking staffs, and the networking research community, we built a network which survived for 18 months and before its replacement T1 network came into production. Part of the original NSFNet grant was to facilitate the fledgling community in connecting to and using the internet. There was an obvious catch-22 here, as the only way to get documentation about the internet was to download it from the ARPANET Network Information Center. And so if you can get connected, you could get the documentation about how to get connected. Therefore, I wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Internet. It was a 30-page guide documenting probably everything I know about the internet at the time, and released it to the community. And it, by the way, was then promptly named RFC 1118 and put up on the NIC with all the rest of the documentation. This led me down the path to being solicited to write a book for O'Reilly, which included not only how to use the internet, but cataloged 1,000 sites where information could be found. The book hit the shelves about the same time as the internet was discovered by the public. So suddenly I spent a year teaching whomever wanted to know what is the internet. Anyway, I'd like to thank the Internet Society and the community for this honor, and I'd like to acknowledge the help of U of I coworkers Charlie Klein and Ross Veach, who did a lot of the real work and allowed me to do the fun stuff and be standing here today. And I have to add that Charlie Klein, getting back to Yvonne's talk about See You, See Me, Charlie Klein, to show it's a small community, wrote the audio portion of See You, See Me. So he was actually part of Yvonne's successes in this area as well. Thank you very much.
Now for someone who's written 2 of the first bestsellers about the internet. Some of you may have these on your library shelves at home. The Internet Companion in 1992, and the User's Directory of Computer Networks in 1988, now a historic record of the NSFNet. Tracy LeQuay Parker.
Thank you to the Internet Society. I am honored to be inducted into the Internet Hall of Fame. I know and have worked with a number of the previous inductees, and I've spent some time learning about the amazing accomplishments of this year's inductees. I'm incredibly proud and humble to be a part of this group. I often think back to my life before I started using the internet. Well, basically, I had a life, but once I sat down at a Sun workstation at the University of Texas in 1988, I was completely hooked, and I've been addicted ever since. I thought I was the luckiest person on the planet to have that job, because sending email to people all over the world was just about the coolest thing I had ever done. And I still think it's amazing, almost 30 years later. Did I envision what the internet was going to be when it grew up? Absolutely not. But I always felt deep down, well before the web was invented, that the internet was somehow going to be huge. That the internet was somehow going to be huge, and that it would have a profound effect on everyone's lives, and I wanted everybody to know about it. That's what drove me to promote it, to explain it, and to push for ways that it could be used by everyone, not just the researchers, computer scientists, and engineers. And I had so much fun. I traveled the world, I worked with many talented people, and I made a lot of friends, many of whom I'm still friends with today. The internet is successful because of collaboration, and I'm grateful that I was a part of this contingent. I owe a great debt of thanks to everyone who supported me. They gave me the freedom and encouragement to experiment and take risks. I'd like to thank a few of these people, but my list is by no means exhaustive. First, I have to credit my internet pushers, Stuart Vance and Bill Bard, who hired me at the University of Texas to create network information services for the UT campus, the Texas Higher Education Network, and the Texas Education Network. I want to acknowledge the support and inspiration during the time I worked on the User's Directory of Computer Networks and the Internet Companion from so many people, including John Quarterman, Laura Fillmore, Vince Cerf, Jeff Houston, Susan Estrada, and Kathy Aronson. And while I was at Cisco Systems, I benefited tremendously from the mentoring of Steve Wolf, Ed Kozel, Gary Kunis, John Morgridge, and Kate Mueller. Finally, I want to thank my family, my parents who happen to be here tonight, Al and Sherry LeQuay, my children Harrison and Henry, and my husband Patrick Parker, who is also here. Patrick played a key role behind the scenes, and without his support, I could not have accomplished what I did. In closing, I have always admired the Internet's open structure, which provides the opportunity for every participant to be a peer and has allowed the Internet to continue to evolve. The Internet Implementer's Creed, defined by the great John Postel in RFC 793, has been a guiding rule in protocol design and states, be conservative in what you do, be liberal in what you expect from others. I think this continues to be wonderful advice for both the Internet and for life in general. Thank you again.
And finally, in this category, someone who has contributed extensively to the Internet's technical evolution and designed how email is routed using domain names. Craig Partridge.
So thank you. If you talk with people who worry about the evolution of technology, one of the things they often comment about is that in many cases, the future is quite clear. You can see it coming, but you don't know how far away it is. Okay? Sometimes it's quite far away. If some of you have read the early works of Alan Turing, you can see that some of the things we're struggling with in AI today are things that Alan Turing anticipated 40 or more years ago. On the other hand, you also run into situations like the internet in the 1980s. In that case, we could see the future, and it was a series of trains barreling at us at full speed. At the same time, the internet community was extremely small at that time, and so basically anybody who had the ability to spell IP and was eager to actually help out was drafted to fix things. And that's how I got into this game early on. And in particular, my first step was to discover that the proposed way for routing email using domain names had a bug in it. So I wrote up the bug. I wrote up a solution to it, which I will tell you right now was exceptionally ugly. And I sent it to John Postel, and John sent me back a note saying, why does this look so ghastly? And I explained to him it was the only way, given the way the DNS had been structured, to fix things, unless we made some small changes to the DNS. And he said, well, let's make those changes, because this is terrible. And he said, and since you were smart enough to find the bug, you're the one who gets to fix it. Okay. And then he was kind enough at least to give me some help, and he rounded up a few other people to advise me in the process. And so that's how I ended up dealing with being the guy who invented how email is routed. I found the bug and was the stuckee because there wasn't anybody else. So this is consistent with Ed Kroll's description of the state of the world in the 1980s and early 1990s. That said, I do have a number of people to thank for that and for the later work that I did on high performance routers and encryption devices. So I want to name a few people. Related to email, first of all, there's John, who had the confidence to tell somebody who was under 25 at the time that he should be in charge of designing how email was routed. He was very gracious about it, and he stepped in periodically when he thought the committee was getting a little overeager about advising. I also want to thank Vince Cerf, who played a critical role in helping me learn how to lead technical projects in the years immediately following. Working with Vint is a delight. If anybody gets a chance to work with Vint on a project, do it. Beyond that, Larry Landweber, who is here and who taught me the benefit of reaching out internationally at the time when the international internet community was small but extremely passionate. Dick Edmiston, my boss at the time, encouraged me to take on the risks, and Dave Crocker, who was always liberal with his advice, and it was usually sound. For those of you who know Dave, this will sound very familiar. After the email routing, I went on, as I said, to work on high-performance routers and encryption devices, and that in itself was also an extremely exciting experience, building the world's fastest router at a time that people believed that router technology couldn't go faster was an extraordinary experience, and that only worked because I had a few very extraordinary people to work with me. One is a gentleman named Walter Milliken, who probably many of you have never heard of, or if you do, you know him from the Steve Jackson Games lawsuit many years ago by the EFF, but he is actually one of probably the top 4 or 5 people in the world at figuring out how to make hardware and software work together. The kind of guy that says, no, you don't want to do make that bit the control bit because it will cause the software to require an interrupt every 10th time you receive something. You don't want that kind of guy. There are only a few in the world who could do that. Other people are folks like the late Chuck Thacker. Walter was one and saved me on both encryption devices and routers from making many mistakes. Beyond that, Dr. Steve Kent, who's also a member of the Internet Hall of Fame and who helped in many of the hard problems on the high-performance encryption devices. More generally, it has been a great privilege to work at BBN. BBN turned on the ARPANET in 1969, and it has retained a long tradition of extremely high-quality networking people, so you can stroll down the hall anytime with a challenge and find someone who's happy to give you an opinion, usually a very good one, about how to make your work better. And I want to thank, obviously, my family, my parents, my sister, and my son for their support, particularly since it means I'm usually not around. I'm on a plane somewhere to work with other people related to the internet. And I want to thank the ISOC for this tremendous honor. So thank you very much.
Our first global connector led the team at the American University of Beirut that brought the internet to Lebanon and established the Lebanese domain registry. Nabil Boukhalid.
Thank you. Ed said that many of the inductees were at the right place. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. I was in Beirut in 1998, a war-ridden city, where a ravaging civil war was bringing destruction and killings and damage to the assets. And I was a biomedical engineer, hiding myself actually in the hospital, living in there, practically living in there. And to isolate myself from the craziness outside, I was playing with computers and local area networks. And I mean, despite all odds, with a group of friends at the university, we were looking into solutions to break the isolation of IUB from the academic environment in the US. So we started to look into connectivity. Being enthusiastic about that, I somehow find myself leading the team into an enterprise that seems to be quite impossible, I mean, a far-fetched dream. And after many trials to connect the university to BitNet, to EARN, to the internet, and failures, being disillusioned by also the Taif agreements that was supposed to bring peace to Lebanon, but brought impunity to those who were destroying Lebanon, I immigrated with my wife and the baby daughter to Canada. In Montreal, I quickly realized that the urge to connect Lebanon to the internet was burning inside me. So I kept on seeking solutions, and I was one of the lucky people who were invited by George Sadowski to INET 93, where I was on the technical track and under the lead of Randy Bush. And that was really a paradigm shift. During that summer at Stanford, Randy Bush was instrumental in helping me find a solution for the chicken or egg first puzzle by hosting the .lb services on phg.com infrastructure. And that way I was able to go around the the monopolistic problems that we have with the, what looked like telecom infrastructure in Lebanon. And second, I met wonderful people and I became engaged with the Internet Society. The most beautiful society that I've ever been and worked with. And that opened really the horizons and permitted me to develop and copy that society in Lebanon and create a large group of members. We have 650 members in the Internet Society in Lebanon, which is, I believe, quite large as a group. And we created an environment that is, for many, they believe it is an evasive environment because still the government is a monopoly. And while you manage everything based on a multi-stakeholder, bottom-up structure, offering most of our services pro bono to the community. And by the way, we're evading the regulations and the established monopolies. They don't know what to do with us. We are people offering pro bono services, and somehow they don't know how to treat us. And we established some sort of strong roots because we have a very large community. It became influential. And really, that's my story. I would like to thank the Internet Society. I'm humbled and honored to join the list of inductees that I have always admired and respected. I would like to thank those who nominated me and supported my nomination. I would also like to a special thank to my family, to the American University of Beirut, to my team at CNS, to ISAC Lebanon founding members and Link founding members. Thank you.
Now for an individual who co-founded BitNet, a precursor to the internet that offered many of the internet's core services year before the commercialization of the internet itself. He is, of course, Ira Fuchs.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here on this, the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Internet Society. This month also marks the 36th anniversary of the founding of BitNet. So thank you to the Internet Society for remembering a bit of Internet history that might otherwise be overlooked. Heretofore, the most notable recognition given to BitNet was when the Oxford English Dictionary, the OED, decided that BitNet was a word and added it to the dictionary. People have asked me, why did you create BitNet? Well, the truthful answer is I was envious of ARPANET users. They had access to the most exciting technology at the time. But ARPANET, as you know, was only available to a relatively small group of developers and researchers, and we didn't know if it would ever be made available to others. I wanted to find a way to provide at least some of the core ARPANET services, email, file transfer, and interactive messaging, to a much larger group that included faculty and students in all disciplines at every college and university in the world. I needed a path, though, that didn't require a lot of technology, new technology, to be developed. And I decided to seek, and decided not to seek government support. So I modeled the network after VNet, IBM's then corporate network, that was the largest global network in the world at the time. They had over 1,200 nodes throughout the planet. And IBM's global network, corporate network, utilized IBM's RSCS networking software. And I asked my colleague, Gray Freeman at Yale, if he would be willing to connect Yale to City University of New York, where I was, as a start. And he liked the idea. So we connected our institutions with 9,600 baud leased lines, and we named the network BitNet, originally because it's there, and later because it's time network. And then I invited 34 colleges and universities to join our fledgling enterprise. Now, since many of those schools, maybe even all of them, were using IBM mainframes, it meant they already had what was needed to join. And as a result, it grew very quickly. Within a year or so, we were able to show success in the United States, which led to IBM offering to support a European backbone by connecting City University of New York directly to Rome and funding the inter-country links leading to the birth of EARN, the European Academic Research Network. With IBM's help and the work of many people in the countries served, we were able to connect scholars in most of Western Europe, Japan, Taiwan, Israel, South America, and we were the first to connect Russia. And at its peak, BitNet had 49 countries connected. BitNet had other firsts. BitNet had the first extensive and highly successful listserv service. Unfortunately, BitNet also had the first widely disruptive worm, the Christmas tree exec, which was launched by a German student in 1987, and which managed within a very short period, minutes, to bring down all of BitNet, EARN, and the IBM corporate network. BitNet's main legacy was that it gave schools, I think, the initial motivation to wire their campuses and begin using electronic communication to share research and ideas with their colleagues throughout the world. And it created, I think, a set of expectations regarding openness and accessibility that continue to this day. In effect, BitNet ended up being an almost decade-long warm-up act for the Internet, a fact that would probably be forgotten were it not for the Internet Society. So thank you very much.
In recognition of his instrumental role in the expansion of the Internet across the Asia Pacific, Shigeki Goto.
Thank you for introduction. We are all aware that the UCLA is the very birthplace of ARPANET. However, UCLA's activity is quite wide. For my personal memories, UCLA is a place of artificial intelligence. Here shows the evidence that was one of the top conferences of artificial intelligence, ICHICAI or IJICAI, International Joint Conference on Artificial Intelligence, held in 1985. I made a presentation at ICHICAI, which I will not explain it because it needs 15 minutes. That was my last activity in California at the time. I was a visiting scholar at Stanford University and under the leadership of Professor John McCarthy, who coined the word artificial intelligence. And then I realized the real power of the ARPANET during my stay at Stanford University. And I returned from Los Angeles to Tokyo and back to my home institute, NTT Laboratories. NTT is a Japanese telephone company. Then I had a good news and bad news. Good news is my colleagues are eager to deploy IP network in Japan to facilitate joint international project. So then I simply follow the Stanford way, just purchase Cisco product as a first Cisco product user in Japan and ask SRI NIC to allocate global IP address, which is not connected in 1985. However, my friend Ken Murakami, using a modified version of iOS with help from Cisco founder Len Bozak, who was a research associate at Stanford at that time. So then, other friends are quite eager to realize a multilingual realization of the internet, and they come up with the modified Mosaic browser with a server which is very hard to read, but it's 1993, just before the boom of the web, World Wide Web, and made by my friend Hitoaki, Toshihiro, and Susumu. They achieved their goal just before the boom of the World Wide Web. That's good. And then my friend Yasuki Saito negotiated with NSF and the DoD to make the IP network official, the Ken Murakami modified iOS, realized, and NTT and BBN. That's the very first IP packet between Japan and the US in summer 1988. So these are all good news, and we have a friend in Korea and China. We work all together to multilingual browsers and the servers, and that come to the international domain names right now. These are good news. Bad news was my dream in artificial intelligence, which I described in my paper at Ichikai at UCLA, was proved to be infeasible theoretically. Very sad story for me as a computer scientist. So then there are many supporters for IP network, and I have zero dream in artificial intelligence. I had to switch my primary research area from artificial intelligence to computer network. That's my personal story. So I learned a lesson. It's acceptable to give up one dream. Still, there should be something for us to contribute to human society. In my life, that was the internet. Thank you very much for inducting me to the Internet Hall of Fame. It's the greatest honor to me and my friends. Thank you very much.
This next person built some of the earliest networks to connect the non-profit sector and played a key role in establishing network connectivity for developing countries. He is Mike Jensen. Unfortunately, Mike wasn't able to be here with us this evening to accept his award, but he has sent a video which I believe we can play now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really sorry I couldn't be here in person this evening, but unfortunately circumstances were against me. However, I am deeply honored to be part of this year's inductees into the Internet Hall of Fame. The 25th anniversary of the Internet Society, an organization that has done so much to further the goals of an open and broadly available Internet. I think we have a long way to go still. We only have about half the population connected in the world. So I hope it doesn't take another 25 years for the rest of the world to be connected, but I'm very excited about the new technology developments and the new strategies that are emerging to bridge the digital divide. In accepting this award, I'd really like to voice my deep appreciation and support for the work that I've done from my families, my friends, and my colleagues around the world who have put up with my almost constant travel and tinkering with various computer systems over the years. So please accept my humble gratitude for this award, and I look forward to continuing with our efforts to extend the internet to everyone on the planet. I thank you.
On to our next inductee. Responsible for leading technical education of the internet in dozens of countries in South America and in Africa, and instrumental in building the Universidad de los Andes direct connection to the internet backbone, Hermano Pietro Semoli.
Good evening. In the first place, I would like to thank the Internet Society not only for this award, but for the unrelenting support of the training activities undertaken by ESLA Red, the Latin American Networking School, of which I am the president. Next, my gratitude to the International Center for Theoretical Physics, which in 1990 held the first networking school that was the inspiration for the creation of ESLA Red, and for the continuous support offered ever since to our institution. The Latin American and Caribbean Registry, LACNIC, has been a pillar of ESLA Red since its creation, in which, not by coincidence, participated many ESLA Red instructors like Raúl Echeverría. My gratitude also to all the instructors who have donated their time and talent, and to my colleagues Luis Núñez, Cheo Silva, and Edmundo Vitale, co-founders of ESLA Red. Another organization that has supported not only their training activities, but also the deployment of wireless networks in many countries is the Network Startup Resource Center, NSRC, led by Steve Hutter. A pivotal person in my involvement in networking is Glenn Reichert. He invited me to spend part of my 1991 sabbatical at Suranet, where I was able to observe the complexity of running a big regional network. Furthermore, Glenn introduced me to Sol Hahn from the Organization of American States, OAS, who had a program to promote internet in Latin America, through which he provided funding for the first networking school that was held in Mérida in 1992. OAS had also donated a VSAT station to Venezuela. Years later, I was able to rescue that station and use it to connect our university directly to the National Science Foundation backbone in Homestead, Florida. Ben Siegel from CERN was one of the instructors of the ICTP networking school who accepted to participate in our training initiative in Mérida, and he later suggested that we should seek ISOC support to conduct further workshops in Spanish in other countries of the region. My thanks to the Association for Progressive Communication, APC, and to the International Development Research Center, IDRC, from Canada, for its support to develop training materials and conduct long-distance Wi-Fi experiments. So I really want to thank all the people, and some of them which are in this room. And I would also like to mention Peter Deutsch, that was one of the early instructors of ESLA Red, and who also worked in the development of Archie that was mentioned before. And George Sadowski, who was one of the earlier supporters of our activity, and Lynn Sanamur, and many other people around here that I don't have the time to recognize all of them, but thank you very much.
And now, an individual who played a pivotal role in planning the deployment of the internet in Brazil, and who founded and led Brazil's National Research Network, Tadao Takahashi.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Internet Society, for having me here. It's really a great honor. And I want to take the chance to thank many people who are not here and some people who are here. First, my sister Laura, who came all the way from Barcelona, where she lives. My brother-in-arms, Demi Getchko, you know him, he is around, and he came from São Paulo. My best friend and colleague, Claudine Oliveira, who is certainly watching the ceremony from Rio de Janeiro. And through Claudine and Demi, I wish to acknowledge the participation of hundreds of people. My idea is that it was more than 300 people for sure, whom I could recall individually and with whom I worked for 10 to 12 years deploying the Brazilian internet. On the other hand, I want to thank, in the person of Glenn Reichert, a whole region of people abroad, here in the US, Europe, and Japan, who helped the Brazilian Internet Initiative take off. And those people helped us in so many anonymous and generous ways. To name a few, let me cite Steve Goldstein, who's not here, Larry Landweber, who's here, Saul Hunt, who was mentioned by Pietro Semoli, Andrew McLaughlin, Daniel Karenberg, etc. Now, let me take the chance to make a few comments regarding the situation in Brazil when we started to deploy the internet and compare it with the situation today, 30 years later. 30 years ago, when we started to think about actively connecting the country to the then academic internet, which was taking off in the world, the situation in Brazil was pretty much as you see today on the news. Inflation rates pretty high, a totally discredited political party in power, a significant parcel of the population struggling to barely maintain animus operandi to the next day, and so on. Even in that situation, we were able to get started, and we were able to get the support of all those people I mentioned and I didn't mention, so that the Brazilian initiative for the internet took off with energy. And throughout the early 90s, the results started to show that the bet on the future was really the correct thing to do. Now, looking at Brazil again 30 years later, we see the very same situation. And the question is, what to do? The whole country has been waiting to see when and how recovery will begin, political, economic, and so on. Meanwhile, you see several initiatives related to ICTs and to internet in Brazil having been advanced by the government and by the private sector, because life goes on and you cannot just sit there waiting for something to happen. And I would say that even the Brazilian government, and particularly the Secretariat for ICT's policies in Brazil, they have been carrying their duties with competence under very difficult circumstances. So, what to do? We have been watching this initiative with great sympathy, because in times of crisis, even those run-of-the-mill activities are important in order to prepare the country to restart functioning properly in better times, which we expect are going to come from next year on. On the other hand, since at least 2 years ago, my group has been participating in several discussions regarding what to do to help take ICTs and the internet in Brazil to a really strategic next level as a super-governmental initiative, not to depend too much on governments, in order to structure the basis for a strong, sustainable cycle of economic and social development, aiming at the year 2030 as the year where we're going to cross the watermark again, so to say. So the short stay at this ISOC event has been very important for me, because it has allowed me to get updated on current issues and ideas, It has allowed me to renew old and always precious contacts. There are many people here who I have not seen for the last 20 years or so, so that I can really get re-energized and anxious to get back to Brazil. And a final comment is that I was watching the talks and ideas of those under 25s here, and it gets clear in my mind and in the mind of everybody, I think, as if it could be forgotten, which is impossible, why and how we have to face our troubled times with renewed confidence. It is that in any country, there are countless under 25s at this right moment looking for ways to contribute to the future of the country through ICT initiatives. So in each country and in each troubled time, it is time to rearticulate the future, to pass the baton on, and to rest assured that an eager and enthusiastic generation will take on. And that's basically what we are doing. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I'm really humbled and honored. Thank you.
So to our penultimate inductee, Florencio Lutreras, led the connection of Chile to the BitNet network in 1987 and headed Chile's pioneer academic network. As with Mike Jensen, unfortunately, Florencio can't be here this evening, but we do have a video again to play for you.
Good afternoon. I feel deeply honored to receive this recognition from the Internet Society, an organization that has done so much for the development of the Internet in the last 25 years. A period of time that has taken the net from an academic curiosity to the net where everything depends on today. During all this time, many of you have been involved in developing the Internet and making it the tool of many faces. From academic collaboration to business and shopping, from social interaction to democracy promotion. In short, to all fields of human activity. We have gone from the promotion of connectivity to a connectivity-dependent society, and many could feel that the job is done. That's it. We created the global tool we need. But, being true that we have done great progress, our job is far from being completed. In terms of connectivity, we have huge differences between different regions of the world, with household broadband speeds ranging from 28.7 megabits per second in South Korea to 1.4 megabits per second in Paraguay, a 20-fold difference. Moreover, the price for a 10 gigabit wholesale connection between Latin America and Europe or the US is 20 times the price of the same connection between Europe and the US or Asia and the US. These factors have remained constant a long time. If we add to this the difference in purchasing power between the different regions and countries of the world, we can see that the bandwidth challenge is far from being solved. It is clear that the market by itself will not solve these differences. Governments and international organizations are needed to promote new investments that drive telecommunications infrastructure to a more robust and diversified topology covering the world. We must go beyond the actual status, where continents depend on passing through one single country to communicate between them, and where some regions of the world monopolize the submarine cables connecting all of us. A great example of collaboration in this sense is the Bella project, where the European Commission, the academic networks of both Europe and Latin America, and the private sector are working together to build a new cable system to connect both continents by a direct path, and improve in this way reliability and robustness of both academic and internet connection. Also, as the internet has become an integral part of our lives, we face new challenges in terms of security and privacy. As many devices become more and more connected, new opportunities arise, but also new dangers we must be aware of. We must foster a better coordination of our technical teams, as well as our governments, and the policies that make the internet a safe place. And we must do this without imposing censorship or controls that deteriorate the great possibilities that these tools have provided to democratic government movements around the world. But at the same time, these tools have created the danger of making Orwell's 1984 reality, as people trust their personal information to global companies that are not subject to the laws of the countries we live in. We love to be global, but we must be aware that the international legal system is still weak to protect individuals from the abuse of companies who know too much of the personal behavior of people. Organizations such as the Internet Society must speak loud to make sure that these companies are not above the law, and also to avoid that any particular country imposes its law over the citizens of the entire world. Let us make the cloud a place respecting privacy and the laws of the countries we live in. It has been a privilege to be able to work with so many of you along these years and contribute from Latin America to this global endeavor. Thank you very much for allowing me to be part of it and for this recognition that I deeply cherish. Be sure that I will continue working with you to build a better internet for a better world. Thank you very much.
And finally, to our 14th inductee, a person who led the design, development, and evolution of CERNET, first internet backbone in China, helping it to become the largest national academic network. Jianping Wu.
Thank you, James. Good evening. Today, I'm very exciting here to indicate it in Internet Hall of the Film. In this special time, the special location with very special people. The Internet Society is 25 years old. USLA is one of the birthplace of the ARPANET, which is the predecessors of the Internet. And with here's so many old and good friends here. First of all, I would like to thank you to the nominees and the selection committee for their nomination and selection. I believe that just do not present this honor to me, but also to all of the Chinese Internet scientists and engineers, the CERNET team, and the Tsinghua University. Also, APM Pacific colleagues for their efforts and contributions. Secondly, I would like to thank to the global Internet communities, such as ISOC, IETF, and ICANN, for their sensitive and selfless support and help for the China and the Asia Pacific since the past 20 years. We remember that clearly that in the 1995, the earlier Chinese delegation participated the INET conference by ISOC in certain Waikiki, Honolulu, Hawaii. That time, we know a lot of Internet friends who gave us so many help and suggestion for the Internet development and deployment in China and the Asian Pacific. Since the first global connection, Internet connection in 1994 to China, there was more than 20 years Internet history in China. Today, China has become an Internet and their application power, especially in recent years under Chinese government to promote Internet Plus initiative plan. The Internet is deeply to integrate with various fields, many fields, to create many new merit courses, such as no cash, no car payment, sharing bicycles and cars, online shopping, and so on. Many Chinese young people have played an important role in this innovation activities. The innovation is Internet soul and life. Since the past 10 years, more and more Chinese internet scientists and engineers participate in IETF meeting to learn the internet technical innovation culture and involve the internet technical development. So far, there are more than 8 RFCs by Chinese people as major authors. Within IETF 8,000 RFC. But before 2005, there are only 1 RFC by them. It's still small, but the progress is started. Finally, I would like to say that we always believe the internet is international. One world, one internet. As I mentioned, in 2010, when I got Pastel Awards, I hope that China cannot profit from internet only, but also should make more contribution to the internet, such as internet technology, innovations, close collaboration with global internet organizations such as ISOC. Hopefully, next time, 25 recognition and 25 included some Chinese young peoples. Thank you very much.